There is a silence that does not mean absence. There is a silence so vast that the mind mistakes it for abandonment, because the mind only knows how to recognize what moves, speaks, and answers. But the deepest presence does not always announce itself. Before the world had language, there was silence. Before scripture, before prayer, before temples, before the mind ever formed an image of God, there was the silent depth from which all things emerged. So when God goes silent, the question may not be, why has God left? The deeper question may be, what part of me can only recognize God when God becomes small enough to be heard? Because the infinite does not always speak in words. Sometimes, the infinite withdraws every familiar signal so the soul can encounter what exists before sound, before thought, before identity. The silence of God may not be punishment. It may not even be presence in the way the human heart expects presence. It may be initiation, a sacred unmaking, a doorway into the mystery behind the voice. Every ancient path understood this pattern. Before revelation, there is wilderness. Before vision, there is darkness. Before the prophet can speak, the prophet is silenced. Moses meets God in fire, but only after exile in desert. Elijah hears not in the wind, not in the earthquake, not in the fire, but in the still small presence beyond spectacle. Christ enters the wilderness before ministry. The mystics entered caves, mountains, and monasteries. Even in Gnostic imagination, the visible world is not the final truth. It is a layered reality, a realm of forms, names, and powers. The soul must pass beyond the noise of the archons, beyond the structures that claim authority, beyond the false lights that imitate the divine. The desert is not just a place. The cave is not just a shelter. The dark night is not just depression. These are symbols of the same spiritual architecture. The soul is taken away from the marketplace of noise and placed before the unspeaking source. Not to be comforted, to be emptied. Not to be entertained by visions, but to lose dependence on visions. Not to be abandoned, but to discover what remains when every external voice disappears. The hidden principle is this: sound belongs to manifestation. Silence belongs to source. Everything that appears must vibrate in some way. A word is vibration. A thought is vibration. The world is vibration. Even the body is a field of movement. Creation speaks because creation is motion. But the absolute is prior to motion. The deepest source is not one more voice inside reality. It is the silent ground from which every voice arises. This is why divine silence can feel so terrifying. The ego is made of movement. It survives through thought, memory, and emotion. The ego needs God to be an object, a voice, a sign, a response, a presence it can locate and say, "There, that is God. Now I understand." But the source cannot be possessed that way. The source is not hiding inside silence. The source is the silence beneath everything. When God becomes silent, the mind loses the object it was trying to hold. And when the mind can no longer hold God as an object, the soul stands at the edge of formlessness. This is why silence is initiation. It removes the idol of spiritual certainty. It strips away the lesser gods of emotion, proof, explanation, and control. It returns the seeker to the beginning. Before speech, before concepts, before me and God appeared as two. Ordinary consciousness misunderstands silence because ordinary consciousness lives inside separation. It imagines God as elsewhere, somewhere above and far away, watching and judging, withholding and deciding whether to answer or not. From this false reality, silence becomes a message of rejection. The mind says, God isn't speaking, so God is gone. But that assumption belongs to the world of distance. It belongs to the illusion that God and the soul are separated by space. The false reality says God must travel toward you. The deeper truth says you exist inside God before you ever begin searching. The false reality says God must speak to prove presence. The deeper truth says speech is only necessary where separation is believed. The false reality says silence means nothing is happening. The deeper truth says silence is where the deepest transformations occur because the mind cannot interfere with what it cannot grasp. The seed grows in darkness. The child forms in the womb. The stars are born inside cosmic obscurity. The soul is remade in hiddenness. The false reality worships noise because noise gives the illusion of control. But the sacred often works beneath perception. There comes a point where silence becomes a threshold. You reach the edge where prayer no longer functions as request. Faith no longer functions as certainty. Spiritual identity no longer functions as protection. You can't use belief to escape the unknown anymore. You can't use language to cover the abyss. You can't use teachings to avoid direct encounter. And this is where the old self begins to tremble. Because the old self was built on answers. It knew what God was. It knew what faith meant. It knew which role to play. But divine silence burns through spiritual role play. It exposes the one who is trying to use God as a mirror for the ego. The one who wanted to be chosen. The one who wanted to be certain. The one who wanted divine intimacy without death of illusion. This is the threshold of initiation. The soul stands before the silent gate, and nothing false can enter. Not the mask, not the performance, not your borrowed theology or your spiritual personality. Only what is real can pass through the gate. The revelation is not that God finally speaks. The revelation is that silence was never empty. The silence was full. Full like the night sky, like the space between stars, like the breath before creation. The soul begins to realize that God's silence was not the withholding of love. It was the removal of distortion. The mind wanted an answer, but the spirit was being shown the ground beneath all answers. The mind wanted comfort, but the spirit was being drawn into a presence deeper than comfort. The mind wanted proof, but the spirit was being invited beyond the need for proof. A quiet recognition appears. God wasn't absent. The image was. The expectation was. The familiar form was absent. But the source was never absent. It was always there. The source cannot be absent because there is nowhere outside of it for absence to occur. This is the mystery. God doesn't merely enter silence. God is discovered when silence becomes transparent. So after your spiritual initiation, how do you return to your everyday life? Not by floating above life, not detached from the human heart, not pretending suffering no longer matters. The return is quieter than that. You still live in your body. You still feel grief. You still face uncertainty. You still have questions. But something has changed. You no longer worship every emotional weather pattern as ultimate truth. You no longer assume that silence means rejection. You no longer demand that the infinite perform constantly so the mind can feel safe. You begin to notice the sacred in places that don't announce themselves. Like breath, a pause, a dark room, a delayed answer, a season of waiting, a prayer without fireworks, a moment where nothing changes externally, but something within you stops fighting the void. This doesn't make life easier. It makes it deeper. Because now silence is not merely something to escape. It is something to listen through. Not for a voice that will rescue the ego, but for the presence underneath the ego's panic. The human world remains, but the world is no longer sealed shut. The invisible has entered. So, is the silence of God punishment, presence, or initiation? To the frightened mind, it feels like punishment. To the awakening heart, it may become presence. But to the soul standing at the threshold of mystery, it is initiation. It is the dark temple where the false image of God falls silent. It is the desert where borrowed certainty dies. It is the cave where the ego cannot echo forever. It is the womb where a deeper faith forms without being watched. The silence of God is sacredly dangerous because it does not flatter the self. It does not entertain the seeker. It does not give the mind another object to possess. It draws you beyond the voice into the source of the voice. Beyond the sign into the source of signs. Beyond belief into direct encounter with the mystery beneath belief. And perhaps this is why silence feels so unbearable. Not because God is gone, but because the part of you that needed God to be manageable is dissolving. The silence is not the end of the path. It is the hidden door. And once you pass through it, you may realize something the mind could never accept. God wasn't silent because there was nothing to say. God was silent because the deepest truth cannot be spoken. If this journey spoke to you, be sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone ready to experience life beyond thought. Comment below. Have you ever felt God's silence as punishment, only to later wonder if it was something deeper? I read every comment. If you would like to support my work directly, you can do so at buymeacoffee.com/magnumopus333. Or you can explore some original merchandise at my Teespring store online. The link is in the description below. Remember, your consciousness is the key that unlocks reality. Let's keep unlocking it together. Thank you for watching. Until next time.